Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's over. I've done it. It's complete. I have finally finished my 3-part epic. If you haven't seen the last 2, you don't need to. So if you're thinking that's way too much information, I can't be bothered, don't go anywhere. These do work as individual tutorials. In this one, I'm going to be teaching you how to get Alexa to welcome you home by doing 3 things. First of all, she's going to switch the lights on. Second of all, she's going to give you a welcome back speech, and that can be anything you like. And third of all, if you've been following the previous tutorials, she's going to disable the alarm for us. So she's going to stop the webcam from watching for motion. We're going to achieve that with 2 potential triggers. One, either we can swipe our phone over an NFC tag, or 2, we can just literally say the trigger word to disable the alarm. Before we start, I just need to give a quick shout out to Crowan. Crowan says, "You have some alright ideas, but your YouTube intro is incredibly annoying." So Crowan, I take all feedback very seriously as a YouTube creator. I need to have some time to digest your feedback to not only help me grow as a YouTube creator, but also as a person. Absolute rubbish, nonsense. Mate, it's 8 seconds long. Just skip it if you don't like it. Right, so a genuine shout out to anyone who's donated hardware to me over the last couple of weeks. That's awesome. I've got some wicked ideas for some of the stuff I've been given. And finally, to anyone who's donated money, I have to do the YouTube creator gushing thing now. Genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You are literally keeping me going. Anyway, this is an epically long video, so buckle in, sit back, and enjoy. So we're once again going to use if this then that, and we're going to create 2 recipes, one for the Maker channel and one for the Manything channel. The Maker channel is going to ultimately control the tablet and the Broadlink RM Pro to switch the lights on following a HTTP request, and the Manything recipe is going to send a standby request to the tablet to switch it from waiting for motion back to standby. We want to be able to do this using either a mobile phone swiped over an NFC tag or by our voice using Alexa. And we're going to create 2 if statements. The first one to say, if Alexa hears trigger, disable the alarm, then perform those functions. And the second one, if the Maker channel receives a request from Auto Remote to disable the alarm in exactly the same way. Okay, so this device is the device that enables the interface between the outside world and the inside world. So I'm using a tablet with an RM plugin software installed on it so that the outside world can control my RM Pro and in turn the lights. And I have of course already set up the RM plugin to be able to control my lights in the first instance. If you need help doing that, you will need to see this video here. In order to do that, I've enabled the HTTP bridge in my previous tutorials, so those of you that have been following have already done this. If you haven't yet, then you need to tick this box here. You need to tick this box to enable port 9876. This says then that this software is to respond on port 9876 to the outside world. And auto start on boot, which means that this device will automatically start this software when I boot it up. And I'm going to switch on basic authentication so that only people with this username and password will be able to get onto this device and therefore control it. I'm going to leave this as root and Alpine. You should 100% choose something else, otherwise you're definitely opening yourself up to attack. Below that, you can see documentation is available on 192.168.0.6 on port 9876. That means if I visit that address on any web browser inside my network, I should get to a similar page to what I'm looking at now, but on my PC. I'm going to come out of that, I'm going to go to code list, and I'm going to scroll down until I can find the device that I want to switch on. So I want all of my music room lights to turn on to welcome me home. And so I need the ID for music room on. And I can see here the ID is 95. So I'm going to take note of that ID because I'm going to need it in a moment. So there are a few things that I need to set up in order for this to work. Now, if you've been following my previous tutorials, some of you will have already done a lot of this stuff already, so I shall make this as brief and as concise as possible. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to visit 192.168.0.6 on port 9876 because that was the IP of my RM plugin. I'm going to be asked for a username and password, which in my case is root and Alpine. In your case, it should be whatever you chose when you set up the RM plugin. And I can see here it's given me some examples. So what has happened is I've visited the RM plugin from my PC on my internal network, and I've been given a load of information back from that. One of those pieces of information is this nice, easy send command, which I can now visit. And if I visit on the relevant code, this is the one to switch the music room on, and I press go, my music room is switched on in real life. That's awesome. That's a really cool thing to be able to use. We can now use that in our if this then that recipe to say when something happens, visit that address, and in turn our lights will come on. So I'm now going to go to ifthisthenthat.com. I'm going to sign in. You'll need to sign up if you don't have an account already. I'm going to go to my applets, and I'm going to create a new applet that says if this being Alexa, here's the words, disable the alarm, then do the following things. So the first thing we want it to do is we want it to send a request from the maker channel on that HTTP address. Now, if everything in this world was simple, that would just work. That would be the end of it. Because we've added an authentication, we need to send the username and password in this URL as well. So the first thing needs to be root, and then a colon, and then alpine, because that's my password, at that address. Again, if life was simple, that would work. But because we're sending this from the outside world, because ift.com is not within our internal network, we can't use this IP address. It doesn't know what that is. That doesn't make any sense to the outside world. That's only something I can visit within my network when connected to my router. So what we need to do is go to www.whatismyip.com. And this gives me the IP address that my ISP has given to my router. So this is the IP address of my router that the outside world can access to get to my network. So I'm going to paste my IP address into here so that all the requests coming from if this then that are going to be sent to my router, and I'm going to instruct my router to send the request onto the tablet. You should obviously paste your IP address in here, not my IP address, otherwise my router is going to get all your requests. If your IP address changes every time you connect to the internet because you have a dynamic IP address from your internet service provider, then all of this will keep breaking every time you reconnect to the internet. If that's the case, you're going to want to sign up with an account with a company called Dynu, who can give you a static address, which will be alpha rather than numeric. There's a guide here which will tell you more about IP addressing and how you can sign up with Dynu. Right, it's coming in on port 9876. My router at the moment doesn't know what to do with this. My router will say, I don't know who that's for. So what we need to do is we need to tell our router that any requests coming in on port 9876 needs to be sent to the tablet, needs to go to the device that's got the RM plugin software installed on it. So I'm going to go to my router and I'm going to program that in. So for anyone who followed the last tutorial, you've already set up port forwarding, you don't need to do this bit. So to get to your router, if you go to CMD, which is command prompt, you get a black window and you type in ipconfig and then enter. It will tell you the IP address of your router, that address there. So I am on my internal network, which means I can visit that address. And I get, of course, the configuration pages for my Virgin Superhub because I'm with Virgin. So this is my router. So whereas I visited a 192.168.0.6 address to get to my RM plugin, I can visit the 192.168.0.1 address to get to my router. And if I sign in here using my password for my Virgin Superhub, yours will probably be written on the bottom of your router. I can go to advanced settings and I can set up port forwarding. Your router will probably look different from this if you don't have a Virgin Superhub, but the principles are exactly the same. So what we're doing is exactly the same regardless of what router you have. And what I need to do is I need to create a rule that says, and I'll call it, I don't know, HTTP requests for lights or whatever. And we just need to tell it that anything coming in on port 9876, which is that port number, needs to be sent to our RM plugins IP address. So our 192.168.0.6 address in my case. So if I add rule and then apply, and then say yes, I want to apply those changes. Now, any requests coming in to my router's IP address from the outside world, so that's my IP address in the outside world, on port 9876 needs to be sent to the RM plugin, and we need to send this command. So the only thing I need to change is this little ID on the end to be the ID of my music room switching all the lights on, which was 95 in my case. The method needs to be post, content type needs to be plain, and then I can click create action. So the next thing we need to do is to stop the Manything camera from watching for motion and set it back to standby again. So all we're going to do is we're going to go to create a new applet again in if this then that says if this, Alexa, here's a specific phrase. And we're just going to use exactly the same wording as before, so we only have to say the one phrase. And what it will do is it will create two triggers. So one trigger is going to go off and do what we've already set up, and this trigger is now going to do whatever we put in the that. And in the that, we're going to choose Manything, set multiple camera settings, and all we're going to do is we're going to choose our device. So I've now got two cameras. I didn't have that in my last tutorial, so I need to pick the camera that I'm interested in. It is my Samsung Galaxy that is actually doing the recording of the motion now. So I'm going to say recording off, mute audio. I'm just going to leave that. Excellent. Finish. Now, whenever I say Alexa trigger disable the alarm, she'll go and do the two actions that I've just created. Okay, so you'll need 3 applications installed on your phone. This is the phone that you intend to swipe over the NFC tag. Those things are Auto Remote, which is an application that will connect your phone to if this then that. Specifically, it connects Tasker to if this then that. You'll need Tasker, obviously, and you'll need an application called Trigger. And what Trigger does is reads the NFC tag. So if Trigger reads the NFC tag, it triggers Tasker, and Tasker in turn triggers Auto Remote, and Auto Remote in turn triggers if this then that in the cloud. Nice and simple. So the order in which we're going to set this up, we're going to start out with Auto Remote. We're going to connect Auto Remote up to if this then that. It's the first task. So if we open Auto Remote and go to the little phone in the bottom left there and click the if this then that logo, it'll tell us to visit IFTTT.com/maker to get our secret key. And this is the authentication bit. So this is making Auto Remote authenticate with if this then that for the first time. So I'm going to visit that URL. I'm already logged in. You'll need to log in if you're not logged in already, and then go to the little settings icon top right. And you can see we've got a URL here. So everything after this / is what we're interested in. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to Auto Remote, and I'm just going to paste that in. It's my secret key for if this then that, and then press OK. We're going to name it if this then that's fine. Press OK to generate a URL that you can use in IFT to send a request back to Auto Remote. So this is so we can do things the other way around if we want to as well. So I'm going to OK that. It's now going to pop up with the ability to share it. I've shared it previously using Gmail, so it didn't give me an option there. It will give you an option as to how you want to share it. I'd recommend just emailing it to yourself in case we ever want to send messages back to the phone, which we won't need to in this tutorial. And I'm just going to call that Auto Remote URL. And that is Auto Remote now paired with if this then that. So I can now send requests from Auto Remote to if this then that. What we now need to do is set up Tasker. So we're going to create a new task. So in the tasks section, we're going to create a task And we're going to call this welcome home. Click the plus to add an action. We're going to choose plugin. I'm going to choose auto remote and then message. And you can see now if I click on the little pen icon top right, it actually says device IFT. So that's the thing that we've just created already. In message to send, I'm going to put in turn lights on. I'm going to put it all in one word and all in lowercase letters just to make it nice and simple, just in case there's any confusion at the other end. And then I'm going to press back, and then back, and then back again. And you can see I now have a task called Welcome Home that I can now trigger via auto remote using Tasker. So all we need to do is now connect up the NFC reading of portion of this tutorial so that when we scan the NFC tag, it will trigger the welcome home and send it off to IFT. So if we now open trigger and then click the little green plus icon, choose NFC and then next. I'm going to leave the restrictions as they are, so I'm just going to press done. I'm going to press next. I'm going to scroll down and choose an action to Tasker. Choose Tasker task, next. And then I'm going to use the little search icon to pick my welcome home, because that's what I want to trigger when I swipe my NFC tag. So I'm going to add that to the task. You can leave it as task 1 if you want. I'm going to rename it so I can remember what it is. So I'll call it welcome home. Next. Done. It's now waiting for a tag, so I'm going to swipe it over my NFC tag. And you can see it now says tag written successfully. Your tag is ready to use, so I'm just going to tick that. And I now have a welcome home action that is triggered by that NFC tag. So you can see now when I swipe that NFC tag, Tasker sends the request to IFT. Okay, so we're going to go back into IFT. We're going to create a new applet. We're going to say if this happens, and this time we want the maker channel, because the maker is going to receive the request from my mobile phone when I swipe over the NFC tag. So receive a web request with the event name, turn lights on, create trigger, then do the following. And we want the maker channel again. We want to make a web request. And this time we're going to send the request to switch the lights on using my RM Pro. So I need to send the same URL that we used before. So I'm going to just open up another browser window, go to IFT again, and then I'm going to go to My Applets. And I'm going to take the same settings from the previous one that we created because we know this one works. Because we want it to do exactly the same thing. We wanted to send that URL. I know the method is post, content type is plain text, create action. And now if the maker channel receives a request from my NFC tag being swiped, it's going to send exactly the same request as it does if I say disable the alarm using my voice. Okay, so on our tablet now, we need to go to Auto Remote. So you will need to install Auto Remote if you haven't already. Again, we're going to go to the little phone icon, and we're going to now link our tablet to IFT in the same way as we linked our phone to IFT. So we need to enter the IFT key from the maker channel again, like we did with the phone. So if I go back to ift.com/maker, and go to the settings icon, we need this part at the end here. You notice this is different. You ignore the fact that it's different. It should be the same for you as it was in earlier. So basically, I've had to do a few takes of this to try and get my head around it. And the consequence is I now have a new secret key. So if anyone was thinking, I'm going to turn Paul's lights on and off with the secret key, don't worry. I'm going to go through this a million times and it will keep changing. So okay that. We're going to leave this called IFT again, like we did with the phone. And then this time, press OK to generate a URL. We are actually interested in this URL. We're not bothered about the phone's URL. It's useful to have maybe for a future tutorial if we ever want to send messages back to the phone. But we very specifically in this tutorial want to send messages to the tablet. So this URL is important. So we're going to send that to ourselves because we're going to need it shortly. Okay, so we now need to create our second IFT trigger for turn the lights on. So this trigger is actually switching my lights on. I'm going to create another one which is got an identical trigger. So make a channel, turn lights on, create trigger. So this one is going to trigger the maker channel to send a web request to the tablet to play the WAV file. So the URL is the URL of auto remote. And so all we've got to do is go to Gmail so we can pick out that email that we sent ourselves. Okay, so this is the URL that I sent myself. So I'm just going to copy that to my clipboard. I go back to IFT. I'm going to put that URL in. So this is the URL of auto remote on my tablet. So this should trigger auto remote. Where you've got message here, I think you can put whatever you like. It doesn't seem to matter. I've noticed that no matter what I put in here, it seems to work anyway. So I'm just going to put in here turn lights on just to keep it uniform. Method, post, content type, text or plain, create action, finish. So we now have two duplicates triggers in my applets. One is turn the lights on to send a web request in order to actually switch the lights on. So that's sending to my tablet to trigger the RM Pro. And then a duplicate trigger called turn lights on, which is instead actually going to play the WAV file. So that one is, as you've just seen, pointing at the URL for auto remote on my tablet. Okay, so back on my tablet now, I'm going to go into Tasker. And we're going to create the task that is going to actually play the WAV file. So we're going to call this play welcome message. I'm going to add to this task an action, and it's going to be media, music play. And I'm going to select it from my downloads. So you're free to download this file yourself. It's in the description should you want to use it. Use it at your leisure. It's called adjusting your environment. And if we go back, it sounds like this.
Welcome home. Adjusting your environment.
That's great. So we now have a task to play that message. What you could do here is also add app and then kill app. And then you could select Manything from the list of apps that pops up. And doing so obviously will kill Manything off. The reason you might want to do this is if you find that if this then that is not stopping the camera from watching for motion in time, what you'll find is when you come home, it will pick you up and it will start blaring out that you're a burglar and telling you it's going to call the police and doing all those annoying things. So if that's happening, you can actually use this task to kill Manything off. What you will need to do if you do that is set up an action at the beginning of all this to actually launch Manything, and you do that in exactly the same way. Instead of kill app, you'll use launch app instead. So I'm not going to do that. I don't need to do that at the moment, at least. So I'm just going to back out of that. We now need to create a profile to play this message. So the profile is an event. We're going to select the event from our plugin, which is auto remote. Auto remote again. If you go into the configuration of this, you don't actually have to do anything. So just back, and then choose the task play welcome message. So now anytime this tablet receives a request from auto remote, it will play this message. I'm not entirely sure how you can specify different auto remote triggers to do different auto remote tasks. That's something that perhaps I'll figure out in a later tutorial if I find the need for it. But for now, I'm only using this tablet for one purpose. And this purpose is going to work because it's going to send to this specific URL, which is this tablet. This tablet's only going to receive auto remote requests to play that message. That's fine. So this diagram is a little white lie, and I told you that little white lie because I wanted to trick you into following my tutorial. I am a bad man and I apologise. So there are in fact 2 triggers per recipe, and you may have noticed this as we've gone through because I have actually mentioned them a couple of times. So the last 2 things that we haven't done so far is Alexa doesn't actually say welcome home if you disable the alarm using your voice, because we haven't set that trigger up yet. And Alexa doesn't disable the Manything app if I swipe the NFC tag. So we just need to create these additional 2 triggers and we're done. Okay, so the good news is this is super easy to do. All we're going to do is we're going to take our existing recipes and we're going to duplicate them and give them new triggers. So you'll notice I've renamed my recipes to make it easier for me to use IFT going forwards. So I've got this one here, which is if maker event turn lights on comes in, then play the wave on the tablet via auto remote. So this is one of the ones that we need. I'm going to go into it, I'm going to open the settings up, and I'm going to take this URL because that's what I want it to trigger. And copy it. I'm going to come back out again, and I'm going to create a new applet which says if she hears the words disable the alarm, then use the maker channel to make that web request using post and using text plain, create action, finish. And then the second one is that we want to be able to swipe the NFC tag and have the Manything camera be disabled. So that's a super easy one to create from scratch. So if this maker channel receives a web request for turn lights on, then Manything set multiple camera settings, and then I need to pick my device. So my Samsung Galaxy is the one that's recording motion, and then switch it to off. Everything else can be left as it is. Create action, finish. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of a very long tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please consider giving a thumbs up. It helps push me up the YouTube rankings, and that's pretty important to me right now because I am trying to do this for a living. And also, if you really enjoyed it, then maybe give me a subscribe and you'll get to see more of this content. I shall see you next time.